Welcome back to Mitch Drive at Mr. Lawn Company. We're at the Lawn Company today, but we are not on the moor today. It is Monday, the 13th of February 2023, and I'm pretty sure the Valentine's Day is tomorrow. So I am thinking of something special that I can do for all of the... That is entirely too loud. Let us cut this down to an appropriate volume. But yes, so I am going to be making, well, let me rephrase. My daughter is going to be coming over today to help me make, or to make for me. Let me get it right. I don't want to claim unnecessary credit. But I thought it would be nice to make something for the office personnel at Asheville, City of Asheville Housing Authority, and just to surprise a couple of my friends' wives with these strawberries that they're chocolate dipped strawberries that my daughter makes that are absolutely wonderful. And so that's what we're going to do. She's on the way now, and we're going to put together a little dish, and we'll document the process and show how it works out. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing on the lawn at the Lawn Company Day. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I said I was going to come and get you for your break.
So just let me know when you want me to okay.
Not the Dairy.
I love you.
I love you too.
Bye. There we go. Oh, I'm sorry, look back. Yeah, you will be. Hubby, what you doing, man?
Yeah, this is, I like the way this is shaping up already. They're gonna be great for this to be getting this. This is a surprise. Yo. Strawberries. I say we, but this is all Audrey. I'm just spectating and documenting. I have no idea what's going on. And we are melting chocolate in there. And this is going to be wonderful. I saw when she did this before, and I'm telling y'all, wait till you see what comes out of this. It has begun. Right, looking at me, but to the effect of things that you don't know if you really like or if it's because I like them. Yeah. I want to test one of those theories on a thing right here. Let's see. I want this hold the camera right here to keep it on your face. Let's see.
Here you go, y'all.
When you hear this sound. Cold start. I see a little bit of a smile, but see, I'm trying not to influence the reaction. But I think she might genuinely like this a little bit. Wait till it goes to the cold, and I pat it, and I want y'all to see. Okay, ain't that? Keep it on your own reaction.
I look a mess. Y'all need some chapstick. Don't judge me, judge your mama. Okay.
It is. So is that one of the things that you like just because of Dad, or that you genuinely like yourself?
I think it runs in the family.
Oh my goodness. You can't tell her nothing.
You asked, she good.
Bruh. You know what? It's wild that I actually do have some lotion right here. And it is oil of Olay.
What that is?
I actually do have some lotion. I don't even know how that really
Happy
was.
Valentines.
Happy Valentine!
Happy Valentines.
Happy Valentine.
This cold got my lips ashy.
Y'all cold?
Linnell, you know good and well it's cold out here.
You know what they say.
So you won't mind putting the top down there. See what I'm talking about?
Bitch, tell her to put some clothes on. Tell her.
Where the bitch?
I got pants
Tell
on.
her. Come here. Tell her.
Hey, it's cold out here, so you need to grow some hair. Grow some hair. Grow some hair.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I love y'all.
We love you.
Get out the way.
Unlock the door, sis.
I bet she do anything.
Sis.
to see us.
Unlock the door. Thank you. Where I'm supposed to sit?
Oh, I thought you was taking that one. Y'all need some more.
Like this, we lost in love. I ain't fucked up, but it's just my love. But it's times like these to be solid in love. I got love for myself.
I wanted to get a sense of the complications of people's experiences. So after my husband died, and it was about a year later, I went on Match, and I figured, you know, I'm 75, I don't know what I'm doing. Do other people know, and what does it feel like, and how do you deal
Good afternoon. I am doing well. I have some deliveries here for Miss LaFrida.
Thank you.
Oh, look at me dropping everything. Okay, and then for Yvette, Sherry, and Jakima. My daughters made those, they're chocolate covered strawberries. They made them for my little ladies for and I'm delivering them today. So Yvette, Sherry, and Jakima, and for Miss LaFrida too. You have a happy Valentine's Day.
Support for buyers and sellers in Asheville and beyond. Support London.
Hey, how are you?
Yes, good afternoon, sir. I have a delivery for an honor heirs from a Douglas Stewart for the love of his life. They're chocolate covered strawberries made by Audrey, and I was told to deliver them on Valentine's Day. Yes, ma'am. Have a special delivery for you.
Look at that. Thank you so much.
Homemade chocolate covered strawberries. Audrey and Constance made them last night. So I'm out delivering Valentine Day grams.
Thank you so much.
Hope you all are doing good.
We're playing Pac-Man.
Nice.
Finger blast.
dropped.
I think it just popped out.
They're cheap flea market ones. I'm always losing them and breaking them like that, so
You're good?
they pop right back in. The days are starting to get sunnier and longer and a little bit warmer, so yes, I am
I'm
excellent.
almost getting back to the swing of things.
I'm glad to see you up and moving around and hopefully more of it.
Yeah, thanks so much.
But anyway, happy Valentine's Day. You all enjoy your week.
Take care. Thank you so much.
See ya.
First News. Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The East Lansing campus of Michigan State University is mostly closed after students were killed and wounded in a shooting rampage last night.
Miles down the road from the state capitol, and today many students said it's hard to imagine anything bringing back a sense of normalcy. The university's interim president, Teresa Woodruff, says counseling sources are available. Classes won't be held until next Monday.
We ask each of you to honor your feelings and to
You're
take
back
care of
online.
yourself.
You are on the fastest route. You should reach your destination by 5:03 p.m.
That may take some time for some here. At the Rock, serving today as a makeshift memorial, red letters spray painted on it and asked simply, how many more? For NPR News, I'm Colin Jackson in East Lansing.
Even as the details continue to emerge from East Lansing, Michigan, we're reminded that the shooting there took place on the eve of the anniversary of another mass shooting. 5 years ago today, a gunman took the lives of 17 people at a high school in Parkland, Florida, and wounded 17 more. These cycles of gun violence have an impact on mental health, and that's true far beyond the communities where shootings have happened.
You can liken these things to like a ripple in a pond where it reverberates out beyond the direct impact. You can see the concentric circles rippling out from that.
Erica Felix teaches psychology at the University of California, Santa Barbara. Last month, she spoke with our colleague Ari Shapiro about the psychological toll of shootings.
Whether we witness it on the news or live in the community or we were there on site, you can have a significant elevation in emotions of anxiety, worry, problems with sleeping.
Even if you're not in the community, even if you don't know the people affected.
Yes, when we're watching the news, we feel the distress. We have this empathy component of ourselves as human beings. But for some people, especially who experience the most losses, there is an increased potential for post-traumatic stress disorder or depression.
Obviously, the ideal solution would be to end gun violence, but what specific steps can you suggest people take to reduce some of these negative psychological consequences?
Yes, in the immediate aftermath, one of the important things is to get social support. We had a mass murder tragedy affect our community.
In Santa Barbara.
In 2014. So what people
in a quarter mile, turn right onto State Road 1394 at Sandy Mush Creek Road.
As a community, it could even just be potluck and just be around other people who are experiencing similar things.
It's so interesting to me that a vigil, for example, is not just a show of solidarity or a statement of community. It's actually healing.
It is, and actually, when I surveyed our students at UCSB following
take the next
mass
right onto
murder
State Road
tragedy,
1394 at Sandy Mush Creek Road.
Most helpful, and it was the most widely attended. All of that stuff rated as really.
Continue on State Road 1394 for 3 miles.
That was psychology professor Erica Felix speaking with our colleague Ari Shapiro. Inflation is coming down, but not very quickly. Today we learned the inflation rate in January was 6.4%, down only slightly from the month before. Stubbornly high inflation means that the Federal Reserve is likely to keep raising interest rates, at least for the next few months. NPR's Scott Horsley joins us now. And Scott, what does this new inflation report tell us about which way prices are headed?
It tells us the prices are settling down, but not as quickly as we'd like. The annual inflation rate has fallen for 7 months in a row, to a 4-decade high last June. But it's still higher than we were used to back before the pandemic. Just between December and January, prices jumped 0.5%. That was largely as a result of rising rent and food and gasoline prices. Kathy Bostjancic, who's chief economist at Nationwide, says that means the Federal Reserve is likely to push interest rates even higher in the coming months. months as it tries to wring these high prices out of the economy.
The Fed Reserve is a long way away from mission accomplished. They want to see that, continued progress, and they certainly would be concerned if you see some stalling out.
Now, progress in lowering inflation didn't stall out in January, but certainly slowed, and getting inflation all the way down to the Fed's target of 2% could be even more difficult.
And Scott, why is that?
Well, some of the temporary or one-off things that were driving inflation have already been dealt with. For example, the supply chain snarls that caused a lot of price spikes early in the pandemic have started to come untangled. As a result, we've seen a drop in the price of things like used cars. The gasoline prices, which soared to record highs after the Russia invasion of Ukraine, have come back to earth. The housing costs are still high, but they're expected to come down as cheaper rents that you can already see in the market start to show up in the official data. That leaves the price of services, things like auto repair, which has jumped 23% in the last year. The Fed's keeping a close eye on those prices, and they could be harder to control because so much of the price of services is driven by the cost of labor, and that means wages, which typically move in only one direction.
Have rising prices put a damper on people's spending?
Somewhat. Spending did tail off at the end of last year, but forecasters think we could see a nice rebound when the January retail numbers come out tomorrow. Remember, we've added a ton of jobs over the last 12 months, and over the last 7 months, wage growth has actually outpaced inflation, which Chancellor says that means a lot of people have money to keep spending if they want to.
Consumers have more purchasing power than we thought as we ended 2022, in large part because the hiring was so strong. My sense would be that consumers are going to spend a lot of that.
Possible clue to that willingness to spend was buried in today's inflation report, and it's this one.
In a quarter mile, turn right onto North Carolina 63 East.
Last month. Now, that suggests pretty robust demand. Now, former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan used to consider men's underwear a kind of economic bellwether. It's generally out of sight. Nobody knows if you're wearing a new pair. So if you're gloomy about the economy,
take the next right onto North Carolina 63 East.
A 5.5% price jump in a single month suggests a lot of men are feeling pretty happy about the economy. Women's underwear prices up only 2% last month.
Huh, who knew? NPR's Scott Horsley, thank you.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Continue on North Carolina 63 East for 11 miles.
That it is Valentine's Day. Gotta be honest here, I don't really observe this holiday. It's too cheesy. I don't even really like chocolate. Well, whether you are a fan or not of this holiday, just be glad you weren't around for Valentine's Day in ancient Rome. It was actually a pretty brutal affair. You see, in mid-February, Roman men would sacrifice goats and a dog, make thongs from goat skins, and then run through Rome wearing those thongs, whipping women with straps of goat hide. And some women would line up for this, believing it would boost fertility. Some historians say that violent holiday, the Feast of Lupercalia, may be the pagan precursor to Valentine's Day. Okay, so what about Saint Valentine himself? Where does he come in? Well, there's an even worse story there. In the 3rd century, one or two Christians named Valentine, historians aren't sure how many, apparently angered the Roman emperor, and they became martyrs. And the Catholic Church began honoring them with Saint Valentine's Day on February 14th, right around the same time as the Goat Festival. It sounds like this holiday has some really grim origins. Yes, you can read more about the dark history behind Valentine's Day at npr.org. And this is NPR News.
Glad to have you with us this afternoon. I'm Mark Hayes. This is Blue Ridge Public Radio. Some wonderful classical music to enjoy with your Valentine this evening. The classics of Italian opera are on tap as BPR Classic brings you Asheville Symphony Orchestra, a concert from this past November. The program features a handful of works from Puccini and Verdi. A trio of guest vocalists bring them to life with support from the Asheville Symphony Chorus. It's coming up tonight at 7 on Blue Ridge Public Radio, BPR Classic, and you can hear it again Thursday morning at 9.
Almost exactly a year ago, Russia invaded Ukraine. Millions of Ukrainians left their country, some trying to take their businesses with them.
They have hard lives here. They can have the same level of life that they had before.
I'm Kyle Risdall, making ends meet wherever you are. Next time on Marketplace.
And we certainly hope you'll join us for Marketplace this evening at 6. Support comes from the Southern Environmental Law Center, helping defend and protect North Carolina's air, water, land, and people who live here. Or at southernenvironment.org. And the Orange Peel, presenting jazz swing from the Squirrel Nut Zippers and New Orleans music from the Dirty Dozen Brass Band on their Southern Remedies tour. It's coming up Friday, February 3rd at 8 o'clock. Tickets are at theorangepeel.net.
We do not have military action like fighter jets over the U.S. and Canada most days. This is not something that happens on an average day. And all of a sudden, we have 4 things taken out of the sky. What's going on? What is happening?
I'm Michael Obama. That's Today on the Daily from the New York Times.
Don't miss the Daily from the New York Times, coming up this evening at 6:30 right after Marketplace, right here on Blue Ridge Public Radio.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Easy Cater, committed to helping companies from nonprofits to the Fortune 500 find food for meetings and team lunches. Tax-exempt ordering and delivery nationwide at easycater.com. And from the George Gund Foundation, working to make Cleveland and Northeast Ohio more globally competitive, livable, sustainable, and just. More information available at gundfdn.org. And from the Annie E. Casey Foundation.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Juana Summers. And I'm Elsa Chang. People in northern Syria are still reeling from last week's earthquakes and the difficulties of getting aid. And we're going to hear now about the viewpoints. A note on the geography first. There is damage in parts of Syria that's controlled by the government and in areas outside the government's control, held by rebels. Precise numbers of those who have died are difficult to get right now, but at least 2,200 in those opposition areas. But it's been hard to get aid because of resistance from the government. Just last night, the United Nations announced that Syria has agreed to new routes into the area. NPR's Ruth Sherman was in the opposition area today and joins us now from Turkey. Hi, Ruth. So I understand you went to a severely damaged town, to a shelter there and to a hospital. What did you hear from people?
Well, some of what I heard was, to be honest, just completely gut-wrenching. Some of what I saw too. We went to this hospital where we saw a surgeon who was pale and exhausted. He told us he performed maybe 15 amputations on patients, mostly children. And then this photographer had photos of 8 dead children that have been as yet unidentified. I actually couldn't look. But he's taken those photos in the local police station and the local council for anybody who might be searching for them. And at the moment, those bodies are lying just unclaimed in the hospital ward. Then doctors took us around the wards, and we arrived in a room where we met Mohammed, who's 8. He had a broken arm, a broken leg, and this plastic toy car beside him. We spoke to his great aunt, Yasmin Shan, to learn more about his story.
They said for 3 days, take them out. They kid. No, that's good. He used to have to.
He's Marshan is his closest living relative. I always said, are you going to take care of him? And she said, I want to. But she's not sure how, because her home had also been destroyed in the earthquake. Many thousands of people. I think it's giving you some people had a makeshift discourse. What was it like? It was this gymnasium with hundreds of families, lots of sounds of children running around. These families have just literally laid blankets on the hard floor. That's their home now. We met Shadia Afra. She's the mother of 4 young children. Through an interpreter, I asked her how she tries to protect her children.
Wherever you are in Syria, the small kids, they get way older, way too quick from the realities that they witness every single day. There's nothing that they haven't seen yet.
This is still a country in a civil war. This earthquake follows children having survived airstrikes and displacement.
Well, What is the latest on trying to get more aid into these areas?
Well, this is the reason why we were brought into Syria by this opposition group, the Syrian Emergency Task Force, to highlight the problems of getting aid into Syria. Like you said, the Syrian regime considers bringing aid over the border from Turkey a violation of its sovereignty, and its allies in Russia and China have repeatedly tried to limit, with votes at the UN Security Council, limit access across that Turkish border into Syria. But what this group is saying now is that this earthquake highlights the failure of that. They say the United Nations should not be beholden to the regime and its allies, and that in a humanitarian catastrophe like this, aid should be the priority, not politics, and they should have just moved faster because that might have saved more lives.
That is NPR's Ruth Sherlock in southern Turkey, just back from a trip into Syria. Thank you so much, Ruth.
Thank you.
Christian nationalism has long been seen as a fringe viewpoint, but it is becoming more and more mainstream. That's according to a new survey from the Public Religion Research Institute and the Brookings Institution. They found an influential minority of Americans, particularly in the Republican Party, believe the country should be a strictly Christian nation. NPR's Ashley Lopez reports.
We need to be the party of nationalism, and I'm a Christian and I say it proudly. We should be Christian nationalists.
That was Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene during an interview this past summer. Christian nationalism, by the way, claims the U.S. is a Christian nation, and that the country's laws should be rooted in Christian values. This point of view has long been most prominent in white evangelical spaces, but Robert Jones with the Public Religion Research Institute says he's been hearing it lately in other spaces too, like members of Congress.
And there was some data out there, but what we saw as a need was to have a real set of data that would quantify what that term means, how many Americans really adhere to it, and we also wanted a more nuanced view, not just people who were hard adherents, but maybe people who were sympathetic.
And what his group found is that about 54% of Republicans either adhere to or sympathize with Christian nationalism. This does remain a minority opinion nationwide. According to the survey, only 10% of Americans view themselves as adherents of Christian nationalism. About 19% of all Americans said they sympathize with these views. Kristen Kobus-Dumais, a history professor at Calvin University, says it's also important to note that these views are nothing new.
These ideas have been widely held throughout American history, and particularly since the 1970s with the rise of the Christian right.
Dumais says as the country has become less white and Christian, these adherents to Christian nationalism want to hold on to their cultural and political power. That even includes authoritarianism. According to the survey, half of Christian nationalism adherents and nearly 4 in 10 sympathizers said they support the idea of an authoritarian leader.
At its root, there are some deeply anti-democratic impulses here. And so to see that more than half of one political party is committed to Christian nationalism, I think explains a lot in terms of our inability to achieve much bipartisan agreement.
The survey also found correlations between people who hold Christian nationalist views as well as anti-Black, anti-immigrant, anti-Semitic, anti-Muslim, and patriarchal views. Tim Whitaker is the founder of Memoir. He grew up in the church and now spends his life trying to detangle these kinds of views from evangelical faith. He says he's worried parts of his community are becoming anti-American.
Most Christian nationalists, either adherents or sympathizers, either agree or strongly agree with the notion that they should live in a country full of other Christians.
Whitaker says he has faith that most Americans will continue to reject these ideas when they hear them, but he's worried about the outsized influence these views have in the Republican Party.
The reality is that a lot of these folks, especially the adherents, are very militant in this belief that God has given us a mandate to rule over the nation. And so, for them, I think that compromise is a sign of weakness, and realistically, the GOP needs to understand what they're dealing with.
And this is just the beginning. Robert Jones of PRRI says of researchers like him understanding the scale of this belief in America. He says over time we'll have a better idea of whether these views are becoming more or less widely held. Ashley Lopez, NPR News.
When you think about the job requirements for elected office, what are some traits that come to mind? Honesty, persistence? Well, how about a complete and utter lack of shame?
If you are completely shameless, you can get away with quite a bit in our world.
Searching for political lessons in the post-Trump era on the next morning edition from NPR News.
That is coming up tomorrow morning.
In a quarter mile, continue straight to stay on North Carolina 63 East.
Is the key to everything we bring you every single day here on this radio station. You're listening every day. You depend on this programming. We hope you'll consider becoming a member with Ridge Public Radio.
Continue straight to stay on North Carolina 63 East.
It's VPR.org. Thanks.
Continue on North Carolina 63 East for 4 miles.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Juana Summers.
And I'm Elsa Chang.
Coming up, a conversation with climate activist Greta Thunberg. She's put together a new book about the fight against climate change.
The fight for social justice is the fight for climate justice. We can't have one without the other. We can't put them against each other.
First, these news headlines.
Live from NPR News in Culver City, California, I'm Dwayne Brown. Police say the gunman who fatally shot 3 students and wounded 5 others last night at Michigan State University had a previous gun violation. But investigators have yet to find any link between the 43-year-old gunman and the university. Police say Anthony McRae died of a self-inflicted gunshot when he was confronted by police off campus hours after the first shots were fired. President Biden pledged his support today for all those impacted by gun violence.
Our hearts are with the students and the families of Michigan State University. Last night I spoke with Governor Whitmer, and the FBI and additional federal law enforcement are on the ground assisting the state and local folks, and 3 lives have been lost and 5 seriously injured. And it's a family's worst nightmare. It's happening far too often in this country.
McRae previously served 18 months probation for possessing a loaded gun in Vietnam. The Uvalde School Board addressed its decision to end a review of the police response to the Robb Elementary School shooting last May. Ariana Navarro, Texas Public Radio reports.
The district announced last year it would work with the private firm JPPI Investigations to conduct a review of how police responded to the mass shooting. Interim Superintendent Gary Patterson said JPPI was mentioned as an option, but was never officially authorized.
We never engaged JPPI. We never signed anything with JPPI and never paid JPPI anything having to do with an investigation to our police department.
A press release by the district in September stated otherwise. Patterson apologized for the confusion. Patterson says district police response has been subject to other investigations. Also at the meeting, the board unanimously approved a motion to end its school year before the May 24th anniversary of the massacre.
This is NPR. The White House says a major airline purchase from India has gone through. NPR's Amina Bustillo reports Boeing, America's biggest airplane maker, will provide 220 jets to India.
Air India has bought the Boeing jets valued at a list price of $34 billion. The White House says the deal also
take the next right onto Lionel Place, then turn left onto King Arthur Place.
Of close to $46 billion. It's Boeing's 3rd largest.
Make a U-turn, then turn left onto North Carolina 63 East.
Second largest of all time in quantity. President Biden hailed the purchase, arguing that it would create jobs that will not require a 4-year college degree. The order is expected to support a total of 1.47 million direct and indirect jobs across 44 states. Jimena Bustillo, NPR News.
Turn left onto North Carolina 63 East.
Governor and UN Ambassador Nikki Haley announced her candidacy
in 500 feet, turn left onto King Arthur Place.
Presidential nomination. She's the first major challenger to former
Take the next left onto King Arthur Place, then turn right onto Gawain Street.
Marks an about-face for Haley, who 2 years ago said she wouldn't challenge her former boss for the White House. Haley changed her mind in recent months, citing the economy and what she called the need for generational
Take the next right onto Gawain Street, then turn left onto Lancelot Lane.
Up more than 1%. This is NPR.
I'm Mark Hayes. You're listening to Blue Ridge Public Radio. Just
Take the
ahead, a
next left
fascinating
onto
and
Lancelot
important story
Lane, then
from
turn right
Iran.
onto Galahad Place.
Masha Amini's death after an alleged violation of Iran's strict dress code sparked months of protest, and now the streets of Tehran are crowded with women with uncovered hair, act of bravery and dissent. We'll get the latest coming up just ahead. Support comes from our wonderful members and from Carolina Ophthalmology, offering regular eye exams for the early detection of glaucoma.
Take the next right onto
2.7
Galahad
million
Place,
Americans
then turn
over
right
the age
onto
of 40.
Everlake Drive.
More at carolinaimd.com. This is Blue Ridge Public Radio.
Scarf. Have the scarf.
Look at all this stuff you got in here. Who's the word? Who are you giving all that?
I'm not young.
Joe, I'm straight up riding around, passing it out to friends. I said, Valentine's Day ain't got to be about no romantic love. I said, let me ride around, check on my people.
You know we were talking about that, man.
Baby girl came and made.
Look at your dog running back there with you.
No, I be carrying equipment and stuff in here, so I do that to fix my seats, keep my seats.
Right.
Man, we tried to get it. Now this one automatic, but it sound good. He'll do a little something. You got to come take that M4 out. See, I got one newer than this that I rent out on Turo. This right here, my baby. The other one is much nicer. It's more your style. It got.
That's all you talked about. I won't miss it. M3. I won't miss it. I can't miss it.
Finally got me, boy. Finally got me though with you.
Man, you know what I'm looking at though?
What's that?
One of those little tiny ass feet. Little tiny ass feet. That's all I want.
Abdon was talking about one of them one time. What you gonna do with a Fiat, Jew? You bigger than me. How you gonna get a little Fiat? They nice to cruise around in though.
One of those or one of those souls. It's gonna be one of those. Man, that's how old people drive now.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Elsa Chang. And I'm Juana Summers. In Kimon Felix's debut novel, Dyscalculia, she explores the end of what she calls a quintessential first love and tells a love story for herself.
I wanted people to have a different relationship with heartbreak. It's something that we only associate with romance.
Now news.
Live from NPR News in Culver City, California, I'm Dwayne Brown. The United Nations is appealing for nearly $400 million to help Syrians recover from a devastating earthquake, calling on everyone to allow aid to move more freely. One convoy has made it to a rebel-held area of Syria a day after the government agreed to reopen more aid routes from Turkey. Here's NPR's Michelle Kellerman.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres calls this a generational disaster. Millions of people are homeless in freezing temperatures, he says, and life-saving aid is not getting there fast enough or in the quantities needed.
The human suffering from this epic natural disaster should not be made even worse by man-made obstacles. Access, funding, supplies.
Syria, with Russia's help, limited the UN's access to a rebel-held part of northwestern Syria, authorizing only one aid route. Now Syria is allowing two more, and Guterres says aid has gotten through another border crossing from Turkey. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
Former South Carolina governor and ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, has made it official. She's running for president in 2024. As NPR's Windsor Johnson tells us, the Republican announced her candidacy today by way of social media.
In a message on Twitter, Haley called for a generational change for the Republican Party, adding that Washington has repeatedly failed the country. For now, she's the only Republican rival to former President Donald Trump for the 2024 nomination. Haley, who served as UN ambassador under Trump, also touted her record as a twice-elected governor of South Carolina and her leadership in the state. She's expected to deliver remarks tomorrow in Charleston at a campaign launch event.
NPR's Windsor Johnston. Today's announcement marks a reversal for Haley, who 2 years ago said she wouldn't challenge her former boss or the White House. This is NPR. In Colorado, water levels in Lake Powell have dropped to an all-time low, as Alex Hager of member station KUNC tells us the nation's second largest reservoir dipped past the previous record set last April.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Juana Summers in Washington. And I'm Elsa Chang in Culver City, California. Scientists say that the world urgently needs to cut its reliance on fossil fuels in order to reduce the catastrophic impacts of climate change. But the companies that pump those fossil fuels aren't exactly racing to get out of the business. In fact, they made huge profits last year by staying the course and sticking with oil. And some companies that had planned to make so-called green pivots are slowing down. NPR's Camila Dominowski joins us to talk about what this means for the world. Hey, Camila.
Hi, Elsa.
Okay, so what is going on with oil companies and these so-called plans to invest in renewables?
Yeah, let's talk about BP because this made some headlines. BP had a plan to shift from being an oil company to an energy company, and it did actually invest some money in renewable energy, but last week they announced a shift in strategy, at least somewhat, slowing down the timeline for reducing oil production. I mean, they're putting more money into oil and natural gas this decade than they had been planning to do. Now, to be sure, lots of oil companies never had any plan to pivot to renewables in the first place, and those that did, there were lots of concerns about greenwashing or very small investments relative to oil. But where there was appetite to do this in the oil industry, there are indications that it's dropping. The consulting firm Accenture did surveys several times with oil companies asking, hey, are you planning to radically reinvent your business model? And last year, the number of companies that said yes actually dropped by half.
Wait, why?
Well, one obvious point, the demand for oil is there, right? The world uses tons of oil and natural gas today, every single day. And when oil prices are high, like they were last year, pumping oil is incredibly profitable. So to go back to BP, its big plan was to invest in renewable energy, but its renewable projects just haven't made as much money as oil and natural gas make. So the stock market punished BP for leaving money on the table. The stock really struggled. Dan Pickering is an energy investor and an analyst.
The market is a money-making animal, and so when they said we're going to spend a little bit more in oil and gas, the market applauded that.
That is to say, BP's stock went up after this announcement that investors interpreted as being a recommitment to oil and gas.
Okay, I get it. In the short term, oil is profitable, but what does this mean for the future? Like, oil companies think the world will just go on using oil and gas indefinitely?
Yeah, what I think is really interesting right now, even oil executives are talking a lot about still a couple of decades, but just a couple of decades, right? That would be expensive and disruptive, higher energy bills for people today, but it would save money and save human lives in the future by reducing climate emissions more. On the other hand, you have a more gradual transition, a slower change. That releases a lot more CO2. It would be cheaper and easier today. It would obviously be more profitable for oil companies, but it would mean a much bigger price paid in the future. So based on investments, right now, oil companies are betting on a slow change.
Well, what does that mean for efforts to fight climate change then?
This is a bet. It could be right or wrong. It depends on how fast demand actually goes down. On that point, today, European lawmakers put the finishing touches on a law that would unveil new gas-powered cars in 2035. Same in California. So things change fast sometimes, but it's not clear who's going to be right in this question about the future.
That is NPR's Camila Dominowski. Thank you, Camila.
Thank you.
In Turkey, there's growing anger at the government of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, whose tight grip on power is facing a stiff challenge. Many say the response to the earthquake has been too slow. They say that some of the more than 35,000 who died there could have been rescued. NPR's Peter Kenyon reports on the mood in Istanbul.
Istanbul resident Ceylan Orhan takes a minute from talking with friends on the street to say he's been thinking about what could have been done differently, what might have saved more lives in this disaster. He says he's no expert, but it's clear that very little was actually in place and prepared for a major earthquake. The buildings were unprepared, the people were unprepared, and so was the government. Orhan is especially angry over the zoning amnesties that were granted to contractors, allowing them to build housing more quickly by skipping safety measures. He says the result was catastrophic.
Zoning amnesty is almost like putting people in cemeteries while they're alive. Amnesty cannot be moved. It's not right ethically, nor is it within the law.
Orhan notes President Recep Tayyip Erdogan did acknowledge that the government's response was slow and insufficient in the immediate aftermath of the quake. He also was not impressed by the performance of AFAD, Turkey's emergency management agency. But the news that the government had given amnesties to contractors that left buildings in earthquake-prone areas lacking the defenses to keep people safe is, in his view, the worst failure.
We have seen the places that were given this amnesty. Two buildings, side by side, one is standing, the other isn't. Zoning amnesty is against the law and humanity. My friends lost their families. A lot of my friends lost their families in Hatay. We have so many losses. We all feel pain and sadness.
People grew even more angry when videos surfaced of President Erdogan making campaign stops for ruling party candidates during 2019 local elections. At one stop, he boasted about the amnesties that enabled housing to be built more quickly in cities like Kahramanmaraş, which was hit very badly in this earthquake.
We solved the problems of 144,156 citizens in Maraş with the zoning amnesty.
Two other Istanbul residents, Selma and Maher Toymaz.
You are well. Your dad's gonna love this. The bottom ones are made by Ingalls. The top ones are made by Audrey. I want a full report on which ones are better. Chocolate and sugar. Happy Valentine's Day.
From what we see on TV, nothing started on time. First of all, the army came away. To put the military very into the area. That was the biggest thing.
Everyone and his supporters have called this a once-in-a-century disaster, something no government would expect to cope with. When he's under criticism from the public, speculation is beginning to rise about his chances for re-election. Elections were due to be held before the end of June. Now people wonder if they'll be postponed. Certainly, some say holding elections in the earthquake zone would be enormously challenging, while others say Erdogan may feel he'd fare better if elections are held later. But if elections are held, democracy and Erdogan's political future. Peter Kenyon, NPR News, Istanbul.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News. The existence of people with mental illness has been The country already allows medically assisted help for some incurable illnesses, but as Emma Jacobs reports, mental health conditions are still this month, the story does include discussion of suicide. For John Scully, life has literally become a living nightmare.
When I wake up, I go, oh God, I've got to stop it. I've got to stop it. I must find a way to stop it.
Scully lives in Toronto. He was diagnosed with depression 4 years ago. He suffers from work-related PTSD and anxiety. He says he has horrible, vivid nightmares.
There is no way to stop it. Because of that, I'm also permanently sleep deprived.
He has been watching the progress of the expansion of medical assistance in dying, known by its acronym MAID, very closely.
I actually physically paperwork for MAID. I have it right here.
Canada's medical assistance in dying program was made legally available to some adults with terminal illness in 2016. In 2021, it's expanded to include those suffering with serious and chronic physical conditions. But for many, the plan to extend this to those suffering with solely mental illness raised concerns.
We don't have very good ways of defining incurability for mental health problems.
Kwame McKenzie, a professor of psychiatry at the University of Toronto, says these applicants raise a number of difficult questions for psychiatrists.
Before it offers people aid, it must, in my mind, do everything it can to make sure that people get proper treatment and social support. And I think at the moment, our systems in Canada are not doing
Points out psychiatrist Mona Gupta. Now we have a very different policy where all sorts of people with chronic medical conditions, non-hearing and could request.
Gupta, who works at the research hospital of the University of Montreal, led a panel the Canadian government tasked with figuring out how MAID should be handled for applicants with mental disorders as their only conditions. The recommendations included additional funding for mental health and advice for clinicians assessing people who apply for MAID. Their conditions were based partly on the experience of European countries that already allow medical dying for people with mental conditions.
If we extrapolate from European data, most people do actually, and the people who could actually reach that threshold ought to have had, will have had extensive histories of treatments.
In Toronto, John Scully feels that he's exhausted all available treatments. He had hoped to apply for MAID when it became open to those whose irremediable condition is a mental illness.
It offers dignifiedness. It offers peacefulness.
Government ministers say the delay will give more time to share information with practitioners throughout the healthcare system. Scully for interviews and David Jacobs in Montreal.
And if you or someone you know are considering suicide or is in crisis, call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Line. You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
So glad to be with us, RKs. You're listening to Blue Ridge Public Radio. You can check out the full program schedule and listen to either of our channels live anytime at BPR.org. And you can listen on your smartphone when you have our free app.
Almost exactly a year ago, Russia invaded Ukraine. Millions of Ukrainians left their country, some trying to take their businesses with them.
They have hard life here. They can have the same level of the life that they had before.
Wherever you are. Next time on Marketplace.
We hope you'll stick around for Marketplace coming up in just about 10 minutes or so. Support for our program comes from our wonderful members. That's you, hopefully, we're talking about. And from the Discovery Charters, K-8, West City, where fostering individual learning styles help students lead in their education. Enrollment for new students is open through March 10th. Details are available at mountaindiscovery.org. This is BPR.
We do not have this is not something that happens on average day. And all of a sudden, we have 4 things taken out of the sky. What's going on? What is happening?
I'm Michael Roman. That's today on the Daily from the New York Times.
And certainly hope you'll join us for Daily from the New York Times at 6:30 this evening. That is right after Marketplace. This is Blue Ridge Public Radio.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Elsa Shea. And I'm Juana Summers. Kimon Felix says around the 2nd or 3rd grade, he went from having an endless love for math to being incredibly afraid of it.
My ability to comprehend what was on the board completely went away.
Felix suffers from a learning disorder called dyscalculia. That's also the title of her new memoir, a new genre for the poet whose debut collection was longlisted for a National Book Award. The book, which also touches on trauma and self-harm, is subtitled A Love Story of Epic Miscalculation. And within the first few pages, Felix reveals an experience of heartbreak, the end of what she calls a quintessential first love.
It was the first time that I actually knew what it meant to be in a partnership with someone. And I felt really alone and really unsafe, and it made me feel a lot safer. that armor and allows you to redesign your relationship to safety. And I'm forever grateful to that relationship. But I'm also hyper aware of the fact that for young people, that one relationship may not be the most important relationship of your life. It might tell you a lot about yourself at the time, but I'm engaged now and in a relationship that, to me, doubles, triples what I was able to feel in terms of that capacity for love. And I'm really happy to have experienced both of those loves and to be able to compare them, because I learned a lot that allows me to be a much better partner now. And I have loved a lot, which allows me to feel good.
In the book, you read about these different types of pain and loss in searing detail. There's the pain within romantic relationships, there's self-harm, there's pain within different types of interpersonal relationships, sexual abuse. And you write about them in such an incredibly personal way. I'm curious what drew you to want to explore loss themes.
When I started writing the book, and the focus was on heartbreak, it was impossible for me to talk about heartbreak without talking about these other systemic heartbreaks that have already happened. Trauma, you don't think of it as heartbreak, but it functions similarly. It causes the same kind of symptoms, depression and anxiety and litany of others. I wanted people to have a different relationship with heartbreak. It's something that we only associate with romance. If you decontextualize it, put it in other spaces, talk about it in terms of self-harm, in terms of sexual assault, it's a lot easier for people to understand what it means for a person to be in pain, or what it means for their heart to be broken. But somehow, when we think about romantic heartbreak, we think of it a lot more casually. We don't give people the space and the generosity to say, you know what, you're going through a trauma. This is a trauma.
Can you give an example of a moment in your story where you came to this realization?
There's one moment in the story where I go to work and I tell my boss that I am going for a breakup. And my boss immediately pushed through it with work. And what she said was, the same thing happened to me when I was around your age. You know, I just pushed through with work, and I think if you do the same thing, you'll find that you'll feel a lot better. And I felt so sad for both of us in that interaction, because it was clear that this is something that she went through. And I wonder if she had said, I completely understand, take all of the space that you need. That would have validated me in a really important way, and would have focused it for me and allowed me to say, wow, this is serious.
I was really taken with the writing in the book, and there are a number of places that tons of phrases, and places even entire paragraphs that you come back to more than once. And I want to ask you about one of them. You write that, as it turns out, nature has a formula that tells us when it's an entity's time to die, and I thought that was really beautiful, and I wanted to ask you about it.
Yeah, I'm speaking to actual physical death, because there is some suicide ideation. And also the idea that every relationship has to die, and that the entity of the relationship had completed its life cycle, and I couldn't really fight its inevitability.
I think many people probably know you well as a poet and have read that type of work. I'm curious for you, what's been different in releasing a memoir, a new style of
poetry allows you some space to hide if you'd like to. Memoir was different because memoir completely opens up the curtain and says that what is important here is the story, not just the language. There's no beautification that you can do that will radically change the way a person experiences the memoir. They experience your story. And as much as I'm slightly embarrassed by how much of my story I put in the story, nothing that I put in the book was without real intention.
There's this point near the end of the book where you write about this guy who's approaching you as you're working on this very book, and he asks you what your book is about. You tell him it's about just heartbreak, and then you tell us, your readers, that Black girls get to write about benign heartbreak too, and I think you describe it as proud and saccharine and pathetic. You gotta say more about that.
Yeah. the kinds of books that the industry seems most interested in publishing by Black women when it comes to women. Like, there's something that you want to read and it's not there, then you have to make it. And I had no choice but to write the book that I wanted to read. So when the man said just heartbreak, I realized in that moment that there was something super powerful about a Black girl taking up space in this nonfiction world and saying, I'm going to write about my heart, and it's not going to be trite, but it could be, and I deserve that space.
Before I let you go, I do want to come back to the subtitle of this book, A Love Story of Epic Miscalculation. Whose love story is it?
Really, it's my love story. A love story for myself, a love story for my past, a love story for heartbreak. And it's a love story for Black girls, even though it may not be super overt, I don't say it a million times. I love Black women, and I see them, and I see their pain, and I wanted to give them a space where they felt represented, and I really wanted to write a love story for them.
We've been speaking with Kimon Felix. Her new memoir, Dyscalculia, A Love Story of Epic Miscalculation, is out today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you or someone you know is in crisis, call or text the 988 Suicide and Crisis Line. Just those 3 digits, 988.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. Support for NPR comes from this station and from Progressive. Progressive Commercial Insurance protects small businesses, from retailers to tradespeople. Progressive covers a variety of business needs with a range of coverages. More at progressivecommercial.com.
Afternoon.
And from Paycom, an HR and payroll tool designed to prevent lost hours during the week and maximize employee productivity. Learn more at paycom.com/lead. Nightmare Severe, a nighttime cold and flu medication designed to relieve up to 9 cold and flu symptoms. More at Vicks.com. And from the Will Grant Foundation at WTGrantFoundation.org.
We hope you'll stick around for Marketplace. That is supporting Great Smoky Mountains National Park. You are listening to Blue Ridge Public Radio. We are WCQS WMQS Berkeley, WYQS Morris Hill, WCQS Cullowhee, and WCQS HD. 6 o'clock, ring the bell. It's time for Marketplace. There's some famous quote about how you can't measure something, you can't measure it. The it in question today is this American left. This is Market.
Marketplace is supported by JLT, the global leader in commercial real estate, committed to building a more sustainable future for all. Learn more at JLL. See it right away. USB technology found in billions of devices. USB Implementer 4 reminds consumers that certified products display USB IF logos. Get the whole story.
In Los Angeles, I'm proud with only 2 days everybody. The key indicator that we're right now, I think we can all agree, is intention. And to that end, we got the January consumer price index this morning. Prices up 6.4% last month, which is even earlier, as you should have heard by now. That is, for the record, 7th straight month of year-over-year cooling of consumer prices. But month to month, that is January, December. The formula Bureau of Labor Statistics uses to calculate that headline number. Let's just come out of March. Why that?
The folks at the BLS aren't just out with measuring economic changes. They also have to make sure they're measuring tools to keep up with the times. So this is a big reason why their job is important. Maybe Albert, the Brookings Institution, is tracking the changing cost of things like food, rent, and energy is half the battle. That's what we're waiting for, really, is to talk about, you know, those things that have to work with housing, but these changes are built into these sort of things how consumers are actually spending their money. For a while now, the BLS has adjusted the items in its metaphorical basket of goods and will be decided to try to win for 2 years, says former BLS Commissioner Eric Roshan. It's now to update that market basket every year. And it's going to use consumer spending data from just rather than an average of 2. And that's a very good thing, because particularly in a time of rapid price changes, people adjust what they spend. According to Roshan, frequent updates based on recent data will give us a more accurate snapshot of inflation. BLS economist Jonathan Church says it's important to try to get that number right, because the CPI is used to calculate a lot of other things, like cost of living adjustments for Social Security payments.
Thousands and thousands of contracts throughout the U.S. to which wages and rents are tied to the CPI. Many states have laws that tie increases in minimum wage to the CPI.
And it's one measure of inflation that the Fed uses to inform monetary policy. I'm Savannah Marr for Marketplace.
on Wall Street on this Tuesday, as has It's about a 20-minute walk from the headquarters of the Federal Reserve, technically the Mariner S. Eccles Federal Reserve Board building on Constitution Avenue in Washington, over to the White House. Less, probably, if you got a White House ID and you don't have to go to the visitor entrance on Pennsylvania Avenue. So Lyle Brainerd's going to have a pretty quick jaunt over to her new office. The White House announced today that the current vice chair of the Fed is going to be the next director of the National Economic Council, which means that she's going to move from helping to set interest rates to helping to set the economic agenda for the Biden administration. In other words, switching from monetary policy to fiscal policy. Marketplace's Stephanie Hughes is on that one.
Monetary and fiscal policy both sound vaguely money-ish. To keep them straight, I find etymology helps. Fiscal comes from the Latin word fiscus, which means basket. Back in ancient Rome, the government stored taxpayers' money in baskets. Peter Conti Brown at the Wharton School thinks of it this way.
When you hear fiscal policy, think the tough, value-laden decisions that politicians must make about public money.
So when to pull money out of the basket and spend it, or put more in there by taxing. Whereas
monetary policy is about the value of that money.
And raising or lowering interest rates to change money's value. That's the job of the Federal Reserve. To have someone move from making monetary to fiscal policy?
It's not uncommon, but it's not common.
Harvey Rosenblum worked for the Federal Reserve for more than 4 decades. He's an economist and says at the Fed, everyone speaks economist. But at the White House or in Congress, you've got
hundreds of dialects that you're trying to understand about where people are coming from, and they're driven by ideology. In monetary policy, people are driven by the debt.
At the Federal Reserve, the main job is to keep the economy steady, says Stanford's John Taylor.
I think the person who goes from that to the White House has more information about that than most people.
One example, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who used to be the Fed chair. But Peter Conti Brown cautions against having too many Fed in the White House.
We'll be getting push the flat set of views to the president that isn't just reflecting whatever the Fed wants to be done.
Conti Brown says sometimes central bankers fall into a rhythm of groupthink, which doesn't always lead to good policy results. I'm Stephanie Hughes, Markets.
Somebody brought up something called the Federal Games Guild. Turns out it's been around for a while. It started in the Wilson Center, an organization, informal by its own description, of government agencies that see merit in using games to help people understand sometimes really complicated policy issues. Elizabeth Newberry is the director of the Serious Games Initiative at the Wilson Center, also the chair of the FGG. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So, when you go to a big party, a cocktail party, or a kids' soccer game, and somebody says, "What do you do?" and you say, "I'm the director of the Serious Games Initiative at the Wilson Center, and I'm also affiliated with the Federal Games Guild," then what happens?
Well, typically they ask me to explain Minecraft to them. But more importantly, I explain that I have a background in PhD in game studies from Cornell University, and part of my job is to use games for positive outcomes or social good and to tackle leading policy issues of today.
Well, keep going with the policy issues. What makes a good policy game?
Yeah, so at the Wilson Center, we're an international focused think tank. We also develop games that try to help engage broad dynamics of stakeholders. In my case, often middle school students and up on leading policy issues. One of our games is called Fiscal Ship. It's on the federal budget and national debt. Yeah.
That is a hard game, by the way. It is a super hard game.
Oh, yeah, well, I can... everything from, again, middle school students to members of Congress, and it's interesting how everyone comes with a different lens to this particular game.
We should say here that Fiscal Ship is a game about the federal budget, and you get some policy objectives, or you choose yours, and then you have to make the budget work. And as I said, and maybe it's just me, I think it's really hard. How does one, however, go about getting involved with the game work for these policy games that you're talking about? I mean, not everybody has a PhD in game studies.
Yeah, so thank you again for the, obviously you have played the Fiscal Ship. I should also note that you can play at fiscalship.org yourself and see if you do better than we can at it. But one of the things that...
So do you know the secret cheat code for Fiscal Ship?
Well, I can't give all the secrets, but I will say that the game will stop you if the goals that you set are too hard. But most of the time you can get to goals that
maybe after, but seriously, how do, I mean, look, the Federal Games Guild and the Serious Games Initiative, it's serious work.
Exactly. So games can be really used to help motivate people to learn. The other thing that we know games are really good at is that they're organized math.
Yeah, so what does it take for policy games?
So I would say that they're not necessarily as good at like a graduate level course. You're not going to get the same thing from reading a 25-page policy brief as you'll get from a game, but more people I've ever read my game than they will read a 25-page policy brief.
I'm not taking that bet. That is a safe bet. Outside of policy games, like when you go home and you're done with gaming professionally for the day, or you do a game night?
Yes, I do play video games. It's part of the job, but also, and in point of fact, the reason I got into the field I'm interested in is because there aren't a lot of women gamers out there. Who notoriously keep getting out of the psychogenesis and that sort of thing while like a professional focus to show them that I can do it better than they can.
Well, on the theory that they might be listening, because you'll tell them that you're on. Can you beat them now?
They probably wouldn't admit it, but I probably can.
Elizabeth Newberry, she's the director of the Syrian Initiative. Elizabeth, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Last summer, natural gas prices were at 14-year highs, thanks mostly to spillover from the Russian invasion. Since then, that gas is off by more than half, which is nice for natural gas customers, particularly utilities that burn it to make electricity for customers. It's not so nice, though, for producers who are now confronting quite the change in their fortunes. And that gets us to the marketplace economic word of the day, hedging. Marketplace's Lily Jamali is on Explainer.
Last year, prices of natural gas hit their highest level since around 2008, according to Clark Williams Derry of the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis.
One of the big reasons was that the U.S. was exporting more and more natural gas in the form of liquefied natural gas.
Much of it went to Europe as the continent worked to wean itself off of Russian natural gas. Prices peaked near $9 per million BTUs.
It's now below $2.50 per BTU. So it's a tremendous increase.
And that's why gas producers hedge, says Bob McNally, president of Rapidan Energy Group. It's a strategy that locks in prices based on expectations for the future.
It's insurance against a bad thing happening. The bad thing here would be price moves against you.
But hedging can be risky.
True. When you pay a lot of money to insure against the price collapse, but it turns out prices went up. Yeah, sure, investors aren't so happy. In retrospect, you look like you won wise.
Hedging has declined recently in the natural gas industry. Last year, 52% of production was hedged. This year, it's down to 36%, according to consultants at Energy Aspects. It's not just sellers that hedge, buyers do too, and they may be cutting back as well, says RJU Futures Eli Tesfaye, whose clients include agribusinesses that purchase fertilizers made with natural gas.
They don't need to hedge. It's not going to impact their cost that much.
Bottom line is, given the decline in hedging right now, natural gas producers and consumers are more exposed to another spike in prices. I'm Lily Jamali for Marketplace.
Coming up,
Do you really have cats? Oh my gosh, you really have cats? This is amazing. I love cats. Let's go see them.
dog people, this one might not be me. First though, let's do the numbers. Dow Industrial's down 156 today, almost a 0.5%, 34,089. The Nasdaq gained 68 points, almost 0.6%, 11,960. S&P 500 basically flat, 41 and 46. We heard from Lily Jamali about hedging by nat gas producers. So, looking at some natural gas stocks, Antero Resources rose 1 4/10%. Cheniere Energy was up 0.6%. EQT Corporation lifted 0.7%. The CPI yield on the 10-year T-note rose to 3.75%. Well, this new marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Unisys. Where some see barriers, Unisys sees breakthroughs. Technology solutions. Secure workplace, app modernization, cloud, and beyond. One breakthrough sets the next in motion. Unisys, keep breaking through. More at unisys.com. And by Seek Out, technology designed to help organizations build a culture of internal mobility and illuminate career paths for everyone. Seek Out helps great people and companies grow brilliantly.
Thank you for joining us for Marketplace here on Blue Ridge Public Radio. My name's Mark Hayes. It is a pleasure having you with us. Support comes from our members and First Citizens Wealth Management, committed to building strong financial futures one client at a time. More information is available at firstcitizens.com/wealth or ever first. This is Blue Ridge Public Radio.